Let's bring in CBS News politics reporter Zak Hudak to talk about this. Zak, good to see you, my friend. A new poll, as you know, shows former President Trump dominating the 2024 field among likely Republican caucus goers in Iowa. However, this is important. Nikki Haley now is tied with Ron DeSantis in second place. What do those numbers tell you?
You know, I think, Vlad, even more notable than the straight-up numbers there is the enthusiasm that these polls show. In Iowa, where they have caucuses, not a standard primary, the enthusiasm that your supporters have for you has a outsized effect. There is effectively a room where everyone is seeing what everyone is doing and has the opportunity to compel them to go to a different candidate. So this is a place where having really, really vehemently strong supporters behind you has a way bigger effect. And what I think we'll see is that the polls may even understate a little bit the support that Donald Trump currently has. Now, we still have about 80 days before we get there, and a lot could change. But I think, if anything, right now, the polls are understating the strength that Donald Trump has in Iowa.
Wow, that's interesting. All of the major candidates spoke at the Republican Jewish Coalition's annual summit in Las Vegas over the weekend. How is the Israel-Hamas war changing the conversation these presidential hopefuls are having?
It is causing them to all rally around Israel. They probably would be to some extent otherwise, but it is causing sort of a contest to see who can show the strongest support for Israel. Donald Trump has taken the strategy of being very vocal and saying things like, for each drop of blood dropped from an American, there will be a gallon from Hamas. And that's something that Nikki Haley has zeroed in on. And she's seeing this as an opportunity to remind voters that this is a position, President of the United States, where you have to deal with major foreign policy issues. She acknowledges and realizes that she probably has the strongest foreign policy experience, and she's trying to remind voters of that. So in this issue, she's pivoting and saying, look at Ukraine, look at the calls Donald Trump has made to not continue to support Ukraine financially. Imagine how close that could be to him or someone else doing the same thing with Israel. So you're seeing most of the field double down on their support of Israel, but Nikki Haley finding a little bit of a way to contrast from other candidates, particularly Donald Trump, at a time when she is rising on him.
Zach, we were just talking about this earlier. Mike Pence spent the entirety of his campaign making mealy-mouthed references to the former president when it came to his attempt to overthrow the 2020 election. And I think that he never really distinguished himself. So the question, of course, is who would he throw his support behind now that he's out of the running? Although, what support? He barely was polling at 3%.
Does he have any clout at all?
That was the question.
Right.
Do you have any clout at all? Because you could just decline not to endorse anybody if the former president becomes the nominee.
Yeah.
But if you go ahead and endorse him, what was the point of this whole charade?
I think you guys hit the nail on the head in questioning whether Mike Pence really has much clout, whether his endorsement will really mean very much. I think the biggest problem he faced as he attempted to run in this election was that the biggest claim to fame he has is refusing to do Donald Trump's bidding and not certify the 2020 election. The second biggest claim to fame he has is being Donald Trump's vice president. So there are these two things that when you're talking about one, you kind of can't talk about the other. He was extremely, extremely loyal to the former president for nearly 4 years. When the time came and he felt that he had to make a real constitutional consideration, he did what he thought he had to do and broke from the president. But those are two issues that his presumptive base would have been the same base as Donald Trump's. It would have been the heart of the Republican Party.
However, you mean the base that was shouting "Hang Mike Pence" when they were rioting in the Capitol?
Well, I mean, but he does. I feel like he got a lot of support from evangelicals, because if there's one thing about Mike Pence that you know is that he is a man of faith. Now,
you haven't seen the AI art the artificial intelligence art about Donald Trump that I've been seeing about him standing next to Jesus, and that comes from those evangelicals, supposedly.
Right. So I don't know, the evangelicals, maybe he has sway with them.
I think he helped give Donald Trump, a man who's had multiple wives and has been promiscuous through a lot of his life, I think he helped give him credibility with them. I just don't know that alone is enough for him to have much of an impact in this
Right.
race at this point. I think most of the people who are supporting Donald Trump are doing so despite whatever personal ethical considerations they have. They're doing so because they feel strongly that he's the only guy that can do it. They have fully bought into this persona of him being sort of the strong man who's the only person who can save the country in their eyes.
So in the meantime, as Vlad pointed out, Nikki Haley is sort of rising in the polls. She's going to be filing to be on the ballot today in South Carolina. It's her home state, but she's not the only candidate from South Carolina. What's her pitch to voters?
Her pitch to voters there is, look, I have done this for you on the state level. I have been the executive in chief for all of you, and I have done it well. I think she does have the biggest risk in this state because it's the state where she has the highest expectations. I look back with this a lot to Elizabeth Warren in Iowa last cycle. She's not from Iowa, but that's where her campaign had fully invested. And the expectation was she was going to win or she was going to finish in second there. She ended up finishing in third, and that was covered as a major loss. For Nikki Haley, she has to get past someone like Donald Trump in Iowa and New Hampshire, but she could do so finishing in second, maybe even third. When the time comes and she gets to the fourth state, to South Carolina, she really needs a first place finish to show that she can be a major contender and could beat even the former president if it comes down to the two of them.
Right. Zach, thank you very much.
Thank you.